G'day folks, Damon from Nomad. I'm just going to talk you through the rigging techniques for the Madmacs and DTX Minnows for trolling offshore for Wahoo, Tuna, any of your pelagic species. You can rig these lures all in a very similar way. There's not really a lot of specific differences between your DTXs and Madmacs. The rigging is very similar for both of them. So I'm going to start with a 165 DTX that I've got here. This has got some single strand wire. This is really straightforward. It's just a haywire twist on both ends. I've got this guy coiled up so you can just store it nicely in your lure roll. You can open that up and then you can just clip it onto the end of your rod. That's just a standard haywire twist on both ends. Anywhere from 2 to 4 feet of single strand wire is perfect. So that can be rigged, straight onto the split ring on the front, no problems. Whether there's a solid ring or a split ring, doesn't matter, you can just put it straight on there. The next one I've got here is the DTX 200. I've got this guy rigged with 150 pound mono. You can rig them with fluorocarbon as well. The real trick with this is just to make sure that the crimp is really neat on the end. So when you look at this, you can see that the mono doesn't poke out the end. We haven't got a tag end poking out. The crimp's done really neatly. You just leave your little flared end at each end of the crimp. Make it a really nice, neat connection. That'll work perfectly. So anywhere from 100 pound, depending on what species you're chasing, you can use it, mono, you can use it for Wahoo, no problems. You really don't get a lot of bite off issues on the DTX Minnows with mono because the extra lip at the front. Obviously the Madmacs, you can run into a little bit more trouble with Wahoo just using straight mono on those, but certainly on the DTX Minnows, you can run straight mono or fluoro, absolutely no problems. So the other options you've got here, the Madmacs, this one's rigged with multi-strand cable, so anywhere from 175 up to 250 pound multi-strand cable's perfect. Again, this one's got a Flemish eye on the front. The other one here is exactly the same cable, and I've just rigged it a little bit differently to show you. I prefer this method on the lure, and then I put a Flemish eye on the top where I put my snap on. So this has got a loop, just a really nice small neat loop down the bottom near the crimp. So the key with any of these lures, if you're trying to get maximum performance out of them, they've got to be rigged neatly. It doesn't necessarily need to be perfectly rigged, but just take care with your tag ends, your crimps, the eyelets, just make them nice and small, because if you're trying to drag one of these at, say a DTX Minnow, you're trying to do 12, 14 knots on something that goes super, super deep, it needs to be working perfectly. So just check your connections. The other thing to check is once you've caught a couple of fish on these, just make sure that the eyelets don't get bent. So sometimes you'll gaff a fish, bring it on the deck, the fish is thrashing around, the eyelet on the end of the lure can sometimes just get knocked when it's flapping around on the floor. Just get your pliers and give it a little straighten. But usually what I do before I put the lure back over the side, I'll just look down there and say, oh yep, my tail eyelet's straight, yep, belly eyelet's straight, good to go, you shouldn't have a problem. The only other thing to look at with any of these high-speed lures that you're trying to get real top-end performance out of, and when I say top-end performance, if the lure's rated at 20 knots and you're trying to regularly run it at 18, 19 knots, you need to make sure everything's set up properly. If you're running that lure at 8 or 9 knots, you really don't have to pay much attention to what you're doing at all. It's just going to work. So one of the key things with these lures to get that maximum performance, check the body. So if say you're trolling for Wahoo, big barracuda comes in, takes a big chunk out of the side of your favourite bait, it's got a huge gouge out of the side, that's going to actually put the lure off balance a little bit. So if you are trying to run it at that top speed, get a little bit of sandpaper, just sand it back so it's nice and flat on the sides, and you won't have any problems with it running. So the key message is to just take a little bit of care and attention to detail, and you'll be able to run these things fast, you'll be able to put them out, catch heaps of fish with them, and have a lot of fun.